We're gonna have some turkey pot pie for supper tonight. So I'm making the gravy. I use the little McCormick's gravy packets when I don't have any drippings or anything to start with. They're just add water to them. I'm using 2 packets with 2 cups of water, and I add probably an extra tablespoon or so of flour that I mix in before I add the water. I like the gravy a little thicker than they tend to make it, so I just slowly mix the water in to get the lumps out, and then we'll heat it until it thickens. I've got some diced turkey already. We'll add some veggies in. And we'll make the pie crust. And use my little whisk here to whisk everything in. And it'll take a few minutes. I usually heat it just above medium and keep stirring so it doesn't stick on the bottom. I'm adding a little extra garlic powder, probably a half a teaspoon. And just a couple of shakes of dried onion. A little extra flavor. And those undried onions will rehydrate as the gravy cooks and thickens. You want to bring this up just to a boil. Let it boil for a minute to get that raw flour taste out of there, and then I'll set it aside while I get everything else going. I'm going to dice some potatoes, and I'll cook them separately to make sure that they get cooked all the way through. And we'll add some other veggies in. So I've diced up about a medium-sized potato, maybe it's a large. Anyway, fairly fine dice. And I'm going to cook it till you can cook it all the way through. The pot pie is not going to take long to bake, so I want to make sure that the potatoes are done. So we're going to get them at least a good head start, probably at least 3/4 cooked, if not all the way. So the potatoes have been cooking for about 5 minutes, and I just added in between a half cup, maybe 3/4 of a cup of mixed veggies. And we'll let them cook, and I'll boil that together for another 4 to 5 minutes. So the potatoes had cooked about 5 minutes when I added the mixed veggies. I let them cook for about another 4 minutes. I drained them. The potatoes are almost done. I'm going to mix them into the gravy. I'm just going to set that aside and let it cool a little bit, and then we'll make our pastry crust to line the bowls with. I'm also adding in the diced turkey. At this point, I'll stir that in, and it can all sit and cool a bit together. I add about a cup, maybe a cup and a half of chopped up turkey. Use whatever you've got. So I'm going to make the pie crust. I've got 3 cups of flour, a teaspoon of salt, which I mixed together. I've diced up into small chunks a half a cup of cold butter. I'm going to add about 3 tablespoons more or less of shortening. And normally I chill the shortening, but I forgot, so it's not going to be chilled. I'm going to use pastry blender to cut this up, and what you want it to look like is the size of small peas. Just cut it in the best you can. If you don't have a pastry blender, you can use 2 knives or whatever works for you. You can do this in a food processor as well, although I've never done it in a food processor. I have seen videos online of people who make their pie crust in a food processor. You just don't want to over process. And we'll get this all cut in.
Odie pie. Hey, 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 hi. Hi, dear.
I'm going to start adding cold water. And it's probably going to take between a half cup and a cup. So I just drizzle some in, and just don't want to get this too wet. You want it just enough where it starts to come together. You want ice water for this. So you want to add just enough water so that you're mixing with a fork so that it starts to come together. Handle it as little as you can. What you want is to keep the dough cold. I'm going to divide this in half and roll it out. There's more than enough dough here that I won't use, but it'll get used for something. Just kind of flatten it into a disc. And I don't know if you can see those chunks of butter in there or not, but that's what you want. You still want to be able to see those chunks. That's what makes your dough flaky. Just kind of keep moving it around.
Can really see the butter now.
So what I have is, for the size dish I'm going to make, I have actually a lid, and I'm going to cut around this. And this just fits perfectly in the bottom of my little dish I'm going to use. So this is my little ramekin. I don't know how many ounces, probably 8 I would say. I'm going to spray it just so the pastry doesn't stick to the bottom. I'll just kind of fit that down in there if I can. Kind of press it down in. I kind of press it up the sides a little bit even. It doesn't have to come all the way up.
Unless putting a top on it.
Unless you want it to. Doesn't matter. I'm still going to put a top on it. And I'm going to put the filling in. And that's really thickened as it's sat up.
Yeah.
So you can fill these with whatever you want.
Good eating tonight, boys.
And then we'll put our top lid on there. Just kind of sink it down in there. And do what you want with the edges. I just kind of tuck it down in. And you want to put a couple of slits in here. Let the air out. I would put this on a baking sheet. We're going to bake it at 350. Probably I would say 30 to 40 minutes. I'll probably check it at 30 and see where we're standing till it's nicely browned, and you'll be able to tell if it's bubbling. So normally if I have enough dough left over for a whole pie crust, I'll just freeze it. You can freeze it in a disc, or you can roll it out and put it in a pie tin and freeze it like that and then just put it into a baggie. But I'm going to use this. This is what I do with my scraps normally. I roll them out. I gather all the scraps back up and get them into a ball and roll them out. I'm going to spread this with butter and sprinkle it with cinnamon sugar. And then we'll roll it up like we do with a cinnamon roll, and I'm going to bake it. And I'll show you after I get everything on there. So I used about 2 tablespoons of butter, and I just used my fingers to spread it. You want to spread to about a 1/2 inch from the edge. You can use melted butter and use a pastry brush to spread it on if you don't want to get your fingers cookie. And then I just spread an even layer of cinnamon sugar over it. Start at the long edge and we're going to roll. So this is what I've got. Pinch the edges. I'm going to cut this into about 1-inch sections and we'll lay them down on the cookie sheet. I'll bake them at 350. I'll check them in probably 15 minutes. They don't take too long to bake. They get nice and crispy and very yummy. My mom used to make these when I was a kid, and we always looked forward to, if she baked a pie, we always had the scraps. So this is what they look like. They may start to unroll a little bit, and some of the filling may fall out. Just pinch them back together as best you can. They'll be fine. Ready to go into the oven. So this has been 20 minutes at 350. You can see they're just starting to brown around the edges, and the filling doesn't look terribly wet anymore. So what they will do is they'll caramelize them on the bottom. And you definitely want to let these suckers cool before you eat them, because they will burn your mouth with the filling. But they are mighty tasty little bites. And all from the scraps.